The FBI has just arrested a Milwaukee judge accused of trying to help a man evade immigration authorities.
News tonight, lawyers for Omar Jamal, a well-known Somali community activist, have filed a lawsuit to try to stop ICE from removing him from the country.
To an update from Wisconsin, where new video shows an ICE arrest in Milwaukee, but it all started in the county courthouse. A judge is now facing charges that she allegedly tried to help a defendant give federal...
At 4:12 in the morning, Miami was still dark, still wet from a night storm, and still quiet enough that the rotor wash from two Black Hawk helicopters rolled across Biscayne like thunder. FBI, DEA, ICE, DH, and local tactical units moved at the same time. Palm Beach, Coral Gables, Hialeah, a marina in Fort Lauderdale, a law office in Brickell, a penthouse overlooking the water, one federal operation zone after another. The target list looked simple on paper. A fictional corrupt judge, a fictional mayor, an East African money laundering cartel using South Florida real estate, city contracts, shell charities, and trafficking routes to clean narco-finance. But if it was that simple, why was a mayor's private number showing up in cartel wire intercepts? Why did sealed warrants appear to have been anticipated? Why did one cartel member laugh during arrest and ask an ICE agent if he'd said goodbye to his supervisor yet? And why was a federal judge's home equipped like a hardened command post? Remember those questions. The raid answered some of them. The rest got uglier. At the Sheikh estate in Palm Beach, the front gate took 6 seconds. The front doors took 4 more. SWAT teams flooded the marble foyer while DEA agents cut toward the garage wing and the panic room corridor. Judge Hassan Sheikh wasn't asleep. He was dressed. Shoes on. Watch on. Phone wiped. That alone told them something. People who get surprised don't look ready for court. His wife Amina stood at the top of the staircase in a silk robe, holding one hand against the rail like she'd been expecting the house to shake. In the study, agents found 3 laptops in a fireplace already burning hot. In the wine cellar, they found vacuum-sealed cash packed behind a false wall. In the guest house, they found diplomatic-style document pouches, city procurement folders, and 10 passports with altered identities. Then they opened the climate-controlled storage room behind the gym. That was where the numbers started climbing. Bundles of cash. Brick after brick. Shelf after shelf. Not dirty street money tossed into safes. Counted money. Tagged money. Recorded money. $48 million by the first rough estimate. Hidden inside what looked like a private wellness annex. Up in Miami, a second team hit Mayor Daniel Carter's waterfront townhouse, just as his office pushed out a 47-second resignation statement. He claimed health reasons. He thanked the city. He said he had full faith in the legal process. Meanwhile, federal agents were carrying out hard drives, campaign ledgers, a burner phone sealed in coffee grounds, and one printed spreadsheet labeled Shoreline Redevelopment. That spreadsheet matched shell companies already flagged in 2 narcotics cases and a human trafficking inquiry tied to a fictional Somali-American network moving people, pills, and cash through South Florida. If you've watched Sinaloa cartel cases or Chung cartel cases, you know the usual pattern. Drugs, stash houses, coded calls. This didn't look like that. This looked corporate, civic, sanitized. Then the first real fracture appeared. Inside the judge's library, behind a row of legal treatises, FBI agents found an encrypted drive. On it was a photograph, Judge Hassan Sheikh at a private dinner in a luxury hotel suite, seated beside 2 cartel financiers, 1 port broker, and Mayor Carter. No one in the photo looked nervous. That mattered. Stay with this because the next layer changed the shape of the whole operation. By sunrise, the action had shifted from guns and door charges to screens, ledgers, and server mirrors. At the Miami field office, cyber teams started rebuilding what the mansion fire hadn't destroyed. Offshore transfers moved through shell nonprofits. City beautification grants bounced into construction fronts. Construction fronts paid consulting firms. Consulting firms sent money to import-export companies. Those companies financed narcotics loads hidden inside refrigerated agricultural shipments and small vessel runs coming up through the Caribbean. Then analyst Nia Alvarez found the ghost account. She'd been tracking it for 8 months. No face, no voice. Just immaculate timing. Money disappeared from one layer and appeared in another before subpoenas could land. Every time they got close, a case got dismissed, a witness recanted, or a raid came up empty. She finally broke one archive header and saw the backup identity tied to the account. It belonged to her uncle. a tax preparer from Broward who taught her how to do math with spare change at the kitchen table. That was the first emotional drop of the day. Not because it surprised anyone that family could be in the network. Because it proved the network had roots everywhere. In neighborhoods, in city offices, in church boards, in legal chambers. And it answered one open loop. Who was cleaning the money? Not just cartel accountants, people who looked ordinary enough to wave at you from across the street. But Nia also found something worse. Buried inside the ghost account was a mirrored folder tied to courthouse scheduling data and federal tasking memos. Somebody had been feeding raid calendars into the laundering system itself, which meant this wasn't just protection after the fact. This was live operational leakage. Remember that. Because when the statewide takedown expanded, that leak became the center of everything. At 10:40 a.m., the operation stopped looking local. Federal command authorized a wider sweep across South Florida. Port warehouses, customs brokerage offices, 2 nightclubs in Miami Beach. A casino cage room used to cycle cash into chips and back out as clean winnings. 3 suburban houses in Kendall and Homestead being used as transit points for migrant smuggling and narcotics storage. By noon, 340 people were detained or under active search. 12 armored vehicles were deployed. 9 children were removed from trafficking sites. More than 2 tons of narcotics were seized across connected locations, including fentanyl pills stamped to look like prescription meds. And then the meaning of the whole day flipped. It happened when a digital forensics agent cloned the judge's personal server and found a live trigger labeled continuity. Not defense, not insurance, continuity. Judge Hassan Sheikh had built a dead man's switch. If he was arrested and failed to enter a rolling biometric code every 6 hours, a package would release automatically to media drop boxes, cartel intermediaries, and foreign-hosted archives. The package didn't just contain bribe records. It contained names, payments, surveillance clips, and private misconduct files on more than 200 federal, state, and local officials, including agents who weren't corrupt, but had been compromised, trapped, or blackmailed. In one stroke, the raid stopped being a clean takedown. It became a race to keep an entire law enforcement ecosystem from detonating in public. That's the kind of moment where viewers usually think they know where the story goes next. They didn't. The deeper teams dug, the clearer it got. Cases hadn't simply vanished. They'd been guided to vanish. Witness identities had been sold. Search warrants had been delayed on purpose. Port inspections had been redirected. Mayor Carter's redevelopment projects weren't vanity projects at all. They were laundromats with ribbon cuttings. Judge Hassan Sheikh wasn't just protecting cartel members in court. He was giving the network a legal weather report, which prosecutors were aggressive, which agents were under pressure, which juries were vulnerable, which seizures could be challenged, and which witnesses could be broken before trial. This wasn't a few bad apples. This was a parallel system. When they arrested the court clerk who handled sealed filings, she had prepaid phones in her desk drawer. When they rolled up a retired police captain working private security for the mayor's donors, he had copies of witness transport schedules. When they hit the mayor's campaign finance consultant, they found coded payouts tied to city asphalt contracts, waterfront demolition bids, and emergency housing grants that somehow kept landing near cartel-controlled real estate. And outside the federal building, one veteran DEA agent with 24 years on the job stepped away from the cameras, sat down on a concrete barrier, and just stared at the pavement. He'd worked heroin routes, meth superlabs, even military-grade weapons diversions. But this was different. Because here, the badges and the criminals had been using the same map. By late afternoon, it looked finished. The judge was in custody. The mayor was done. Millions were seized. The mansion was stripped room by room. News vans lined the street. People said South Florida had just watched a drug empire collapse in a single day. That was the false relief. Then came the replication files. The cartel finance servers showed the Miami network wasn't the masterpiece. It was the prototype. Same laundering architecture, same civic entry strategy, same shell company layering. 9 other cities already had matching frameworks in place. Some active, some waiting for the right officials, the right ports, the right judges, the right panic. And one more detail sat at the bottom of the archive like a fuse waiting for flame. The architect of the whole system had never lived in Florida, never attended a city meeting, never shook a donor's hand, never sat in a courtroom. They built it remotely, through encrypted relays and outsourced intermediaries, and they were still active. That's when the raid stopped being a victory story. It became a warning. Outside the courthouse that night, while reporters chased statements and lawyers shoved through cameras, A woman stood behind the barricade holding a framed photo of her son. 19 years old. Dead from a fentanyl pill traced back to one branch of this network. She didn't yell, didn't cry for the cameras. She just held the frame against her chest and watched the transport vans leave. That's the part numbers never carry. Not the 48 million in hidden cash. Not the tons of narcotics. Not the resignation. Not the sealed indictments. A son who didn't make 20. A family that never gets normal back. A city realizing the people who promised order had been billing them for the chaos. So remember the first thing found in that duffel bag. Not drugs. Names. Because next time, the names may belong to another city, another courthouse, another polished official swearing everything is under control. If you want the next chapter, keep your eyes on the architect. We found a name, and the trail doesn't end in Miami. It goes somewhere colder, richer, and much harder to touch.